space that are just, very caught up in the electoral politics and the emotions of it, and feeling validated for what, the industry they've been in for several years that's obviously sort of not been favored by the establishment. Some people are maybe thinking, oh, since the establishment is favoring this, let's cheer it on. But is it really the best system for everybody? And is it the best for financial freedom, and all of that? So I would urge people to consider, what is it that you want Bitcoin to be used for?
What if Trump's latest financial disclosure reveals something much bigger than personal wealth? According to investigative journalist Whitney Webb, the real issue is not one politician, but a financial system where the same powerful institutions repeatedly benefit from every major crisis, while the public is told there is no alternative. Trump's mandatory financial disclosure reported that he earned at least $2.2 billion during 2025, with approximately $1.4 billion coming from cryptocurrency ventures. Around $500 million was generated through World Liberty Financial, the crypto company he co-founded with his sons. Shortly before his inauguration, an investment fund connected to the United Arab Emirates acquired a major stake in the company. Soon afterward, the UAE secured access to advanced AI chip agreements despite concerns raised by several national security officials. When questioned about possible conflicts of interest, Trump stated that his investments are managed through a blind account. He said he never communicates with the institutions handling his assets and argued that everyone benefits when financial markets continue to rise. Long before these disclosures became public, Whitney Webb explained to Natalie Brunell that this pattern extends far beyond one administration. Her argument is not that Trump is uniquely responsible. Instead, she believes the same financial interests repeatedly appear whenever governments face economic emergencies, regardless of which political party holds power. Webb points to BlackRock's involvement during the 2008 financial crisis and later economic planning as evidence that major financial institutions continue gaining influence during periods of instability. She argues that every crisis creates another opportunity for large-scale wealth transfers, while ordinary citizens are told extraordinary measures are unavoidable. According to Webb, stablecoins represent the next stage of that process. Although they are promoted as private alternatives to government digital currencies, she argues they can still be programmable, traceable, and closely connected to government agencies. She also claims that companies such as Tether have cooperated with U.S. authorities by freezing digital wallets when requested. This week's financial disclosure, Webb argues, reflects the same model she described long before these events unfolded. The details may change, but the underlying pattern remains remarkably consistent. Financial crises create urgency, powerful institutions present themselves as the solution, and new financial technologies become increasingly integrated into the system. Whether viewers agree with Webb's conclusions or not, her central argument raises an important question. Are emerging financial technologies truly expanding economic freedom, or are they gradually building a more centralized system where wealth, influence, and financial control become increasingly concentrated in the hands of a small number of powerful institutions?
The same people tend to be called upon to solve the crisis. So, a good example of that would be the 2008 economic crisis. BlackRock was basically sent in to help handle the banker bailouts. And then during COVID, when Trump was in office, BlackRock was brought in to essentially design the COVID fiscal policy, which the ramifications of which we're still dealing with. That's just one example, but there's so much, whether it's funding wars or funding, the state of Israel, for example, with billions of U.S. tax dollars and things like that. There tends to be bipartisan consensus about a lot of things. I think it's pretty obvious that it's the conservative camp really only, aside from, RFK being an independent, that are interested in really appealing to the Bitcoin base at all as it relates to electoral politics. And they've done so very successfully. But I think, again, what you're seeing here is sort of what we saw over the course of the past year, was sort of Wall Street warming up to Bitcoin. And what we're seeing, it's just another extension of the establishment cozying up to Bitcoin, I guess. So I guess you could frame, Larry Fink's about face and all of that as sort of the private sector establishment turnaround, and this is sort of the public sector establishment turnaround. But as far as it relates to financial freedom, I don't think the policies expressed by Trump, or at least what Trump expressed or hinted at in his speech, because he didn't, as far as RFKs went, he was more deliberate about what his policies specific. And Trump was a little more vague, but based on what Trump said, talking about sort of yoking Bitcoin and the dollar together and using that to expand the dollar's power and hegemony globally, and then also bringing in stable coins, which of course would be in this case dollar denominated stable coins, into the play. We have to consider what that means if the reason we're voting for it is to ensure that Bitcoin will be used to propagate financial freedom globally. So, if you're of the opinion that you want Bitcoin to be, hyper Bitcoinization to come at all costs, even if that means it not being a tool for financial freedom anymore, or it being used by intelligence agencies to surveil people, or by Wall Street to, do their thing, then maybe it's fine. But if you're of the idea that, I want Bitcoin to be empowered to end irresponsible fiscal policy at the national level, and want it to ensure financial freedom for everybody, then I don't think Trump's policies necessarily spell that out, unfortunately. And part of that has to do with the whole stablecoin play. So Trump has been very openly against central bank digital currencies, but the problem with stablecoins, particularly the big ones, is that they're just as programmable and surveillable as CBDCs could be. So most people are against CBDCs because of the programmability aspect and and the surveillability aspect, being able to trace and surveil every dollar you spend. And stablecoins can offer that as well, because most of them are built, they're like ERC20 tokens right at the end of the day, and have that programmability functionality. And some stablecoin issuers that are prominent, like Circle, openly talk about the programmability aspects of their stablecoin. And they're in a very deep alliance with BlackRock, Circle particularly, and Tether itself has made an alliance with the FBI and the Secret Service, and other aspects of the U.S. government, to freeze wallets at the behest of the U.S. government, thereby making Tether sort of a soft extension of U.S. foreign and fiscal policy abroad as it relates to sanctions and other things. Some of which the U.S., of course, in the past has used to facilitate regime change operations and other things, not necessarily stop terrorism, as they are inclined to say. So it's important to keep that in mind. And, if you're allowing intelligence agencies, what the FBI technically is, to be onboarded onto your stablecoin, it's really not a private sector thing. It's a public-private partnership. And public-private partnership is the model that the U.S. and really most of the world essentially favors. And so, I think these stable coins offer that same kind of threat to financial freedom, or, easily could, were things to develop that way. And so, if programmability and surveillability is the threat to financial freedom, then we should not support that, right? And instead look for ways to build robust privacy tools on the base layer of Bitcoin, maybe, and try and make it something that's transactable, as opposed to this idea of having it be a storage, or a technology for asset storage, as Larry Fink says, and something no one spends and people just hold, which is what Larry Fink wants, and also the way Bitcoin would be utilized in the framework that was laid out in the Trump speech.
Whitney Webb argues that Trump's Bitcoin conference speech was not simply about cryptocurrency, but about linking Bitcoin more closely to the U.S. dollar through stablecoins. She believes this strategy strengthens the existing financial system rather than expanding financial freedom. Webb points to Tether's reported cooperation with U.S. authorities and Circle's promotion of programmable stablecoins as signs of increasing financial control. She then introduces the going direct reset, explaining how it shaped pandemic-era policy and why she believes the same approach will return during the next debt crisis, regardless of which political party wins future elections.
Not just, well, again, there's some people that are hyper Bitcoinization at all costs. Doesn't matter if we totally abandon the original ethos behind Bitcoin and getting there. And I think there definitely are a significant amount of those people, but I don't agree with that. I think the ethos is very important. I think Bitcoin is unique, and it's really the only opportunity like this we're likely to have, at least in this, important window of time. And, people need to decide if they're going to use it to
Yeah.
fight for those things, or if they're going to acquiesce to the system that's being set up and is going to be pushed on people, most likely through regulation and executive orders. And it's very likely that in the next 2 years, whoever wins in November is going to be president during an unprecedented US government debt crisis. And this is, if you already see it in Trump's policy, if he's in office, this is the system he's going to propose as the solution. And when there is a crisis and the solution is proposed, a lot of people, because it's a crisis and are demanding a rapid resolution to that crisis, they don't think about what's best in the long term necessarily. They're just looking for something to solve the immediate crisis. And so I think this is sort of hinting at what we're going to see. But again, I would urge people to go back to what Trump did when he was in office during the COVID crisis and the fiscal policy that his Treasury Department presided over, which was very bad and very criminal. And for people that aren't familiar, I would encourage them to look up the work of John Titus about the going direct reset, where essentially before there was a financial crisis related to COVID in late 2019, BlackRock created this plan that pitched to the central bankers at the Jackson Hole meeting in 2019 about going direct. And basically the idea was, during the next crisis, let's QE again, but instead of giving the QE money to public entities, let's give it straight to the private banks. And that's essentially what happened. And one of the people that received those funds, those emergency funds that were meant for Main Street, was BlackRock, and they used it to buy shares in their own ETFs instead of bailing out the people whose whose businesses were forced to close as part of government policy. And so really, this is one of the key reasons why you saw an unprecedented wealth transfer happen during COVID. And this plan wasn't implemented as soon as COVID started. They actually started when the repo market started to go haywire at the end of 2019, and used COVID as the excuse to ramp it up. So, Larry Fink's involvement in that, and also his involvement in the 2008 financial crisis, for example, these same people at Wall Street, when there's a crisis, affect these massive wealth transfers that take, money from regular Americans to the very top, who are now richer than ever, especially after COVID. And, regardless of who wins in November, when this debt crisis comes home to roost, that's what's going to happen. And I think they're going to use that as well to saddle the American people with surveillable, programmable money. Maybe it's more likely if Kamala gets in, it'll be a CBDC. But it seems quite clear that if Trump gets in, it will be a private bank digital currency, or some of these private bank issued stablecoins or tokenized deposits and things like that, which again are just as surveillable and programmable as stablecoins. And maybe it will be framed as a win, but a win for what, really? Again, I'm not super optimistic about that. But again, my view is that the government is essentially run by, organized crime and intelligence agencies that have fused what they do, and it's been very profitable for them, and they're going to continue to do that and pull the strings of both parties. And when there's a crisis, this is invariably what happens, and there's plenty of historical precedents to look at as far as the economics of it are concerned.
Trump's latest financial disclosure reported billions in earnings, with a significant share coming from cryptocurrency ventures. It also revealed that a UAE sovereign fund invested heavily in his crypto company shortly before his inauguration, followed by a major AI chip agreement despite national security concerns. Trump insists his assets are managed independently through a blind account. Whitney Webb argues this reflects a larger pattern where the same financial institutions benefit during every crisis. She believes stablecoins will drive the next major wealth transfer, remaining programmable and closely monitored, while future economic crises may encourage public acceptance without fully considering the long-term consequences.